Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, June the 8th, 2021. This is a work session for the Pitkin County Board of County Commissioners. I'm Patty Clapper. I'm Vice Chairman, and I'm chairing the meeting today because Kelly McNicholas, our chair, is in Vail attending a conference. Francie Jacober is calling in, Zooming in with us, and Greg Poshman is from home. And we are hoping to see the smiling face of Commissioner Steve Child at any time. So we'll welcome Steve when he gets on board here. So our first item today is a presentation about the library boiler follow-up. And we have Zach Hendricks, who's going to be presenting. We also have Kathy Chandler, she's here from the library. We have Connie Baker from Budget here to help present this item. So Zach, the floor is yours.
Can you enable screen sharing, please?
Wow, interesting.
I need to stop sharing.
And for the board, if anybody has any questions of Zach, just let me know so I can call on you and we can have a conversation with Zach about this.
All right, sorry about the brief technical difficulties there. My name is Zach Hendricks. I'm the Climate Action Manager for Pitkin County, and I'll be presenting today on the proposal to electrify the boiler system of the Pitkin County Library. This was in response to the budget supplemental that was presented last Tuesday by both the library and Jody Smith, who unfortunately cannot be with us today. Just to give a quick overview of the system in question, the boiler system is a 3-boiler system that operates not just the heating HVAC system for the library and the water, but also a snowmelt system. In the picture below there, you can see where that snowmelt system is operating pretty much around the entire perimeter of the library itself. Now, this is a pretty large snowmelt system, and as a result of that, it uses quite a bit of energy. On average, it uses a little bit more than 30,000 therms of natural gas, with 2020 being a little bit higher than 2019 just because it was a colder year. And then on average, the library uses 390,000 kilowatt hours of electricity as well, and this is just the lighting and the internal operations that aren't for heating. So this is what the profile of expenditures look like for the library on energy, with about 2/3, a little bit less, it's actually 60% going towards electricity, and then the rest of that going towards natural gas. And so you can just get an idea of what the current status is of this boiler system. And this is what it'll look like if we go to full electrification. Pretty much due to that snowmelt system, we'd be looking at almost tripling the cost of running that boiler system on an annual basis, and it'd be a 95% increase in overall annual operational costs for energy of the building. We'd be looking at about 740 to 760,000 kilowatt hours just to run that boiler system on an annual basis if we go fully electric with it. A quick side-by-side comparison of the two. So this is in relation to reducing our emissions of greenhouse gases. I'm converting everything to CO2 equivalents just because it's an easier number to refer to. So on average, we're looking at a reduction of 607 tons of CO2 equivalent over the 25-year life cycle of this boiler system from the current baseline. With the natural gas system that's being proposed as of right now. This would pan out to about $3 per ton of CO2 that we're reducing. If we fully electrify, we're looking at an operating cost of about $2.2 million over the next 25 years of that life cycle. This will, however, reduce 2,663 tons of CO2 equivalent, but it'll do so at about $600 to $800 per ton of CO2 that we're reducing. And just to put that into perspective, the international average for a ton of CO2 is $50. So we're looking at paying 12 to 16 times that international average to reduce. The reason for why this is so much different is while there's a fixed rate for natural gas, there is what is called a demand charge for electric. And the Aspen utility has a really high one because they're trying to minimize their load growth so they can maintain. They call themselves net zero. Unfortunately, whenever they go over their annual amount, they piggyback off of Holy Cross's grid, so it's not quite 100% net zero. And so until Holy Cross hits that point, there will be an emissions factor related to Aspen Electric as well. But they're trying to minimize how big that will be, and so they hit us with $18.64 per kilowatt hour when we hit in those peak times, up from 8 cents a kilowatt hour, which is normally what the case is. So it's a pretty significant increase when we jump to electric on this system. Not only that, this does not include the installation costs that will be associated with an electric system. For one, these boilers are substantially larger than what the natural gas ones would be. So we'd be looking at renovating the library to expand the mechanical room to make room for it. I've spoken with both a mechanical engineer at Kemley Horn and the engineer at SGM. Tony's remark, our engineer from SGM, was that we'd likely need an entirely new building to house these electric boiler systems because they're so much larger. I've also spoken with Marty, and he said that the only way to really make them efficient and economically viable would be through a ground source heat pump, at which point you're talking about drilling underneath the library. So that obviously has an added cost as well. On top of that, we would have to upgrade the electrical panel of the library, as it wasn't designed for essentially a tripling of the electrical load of the library. And we'd also be looking at a replacement of the campus transformer for the entire Aspen campus here, as that transformer is running near capacity. I don't have those costs out, but as you can probably glean from the amount of work that I just described, it would be a substantial increase in the installation cost. On top of that, this entire project would have to get pushed back to 2022. It'd be another 60 days to design the electric system. Then we'd have to acquire the materials, at which point we'd be looking at breaking ground in late fall, and we don't want to leave the library without a heating system during the winter for pretty obvious reasons. So we'd have to push this entire project out to 2022. And that means we're running with a boiler system that is not nearly as efficient. They were not designed for altitude, so they're actually running below their 90% efficiency rating, probably in the 80 to 85% efficiency rating. And we'd emit an extra 30 tons of CO2 over the next year that we could have avoided, as well as incurring about another $18,000 in servicing and repair expenses on these boilers because they are near their point of failure. I've spoken with both Jody and Mike, and they both said we can make them last the extra year. It would just require quite a bit of servicing and repair to get them to the other side. To put that in perspective, oh, my graph didn't come through. Well, that's worrisome. Well, this graph is supposed to be a tree map that shows you how the library compares to the other ones. The library really accounts for about 2.3% of all of the emissions of government operations of Pitkin County, so that's what we're paying for to reduce here. And I will point out that the demand charge on Holy Cross's grid is $5 per kilowatt hour, so it's a significant reduction. So we could likely do the same thing at, say, the Public Works facility or Health and Human Services or the airport and incur a substantially less of a cost. That being said, going full electric with it is commendable, and I'm fully supportive of it. I just want to make sure that you have an understanding of the costs associated and what we're paying for each reduction. And I also want to provide one possible alternative for this as well. Again, as I mentioned, the majority of what this system is running is the snowmelt system. Probably about 2/3 of this boiler system is going to this snowmelt system. So one option that we have is to do the replacement, but when the snowmelt system runs into its end of life cycle in about 10 to 15 years, do a comprehensive assessment of what this system is and if we want to replace it or reduce it. We obviously would probably want to keep it along North Mill Street just from a safety perspective, given how steep it is. We want to prevent ice buildup. But that area circled in blue, the alleyway going into the parking garage, it hasn't been running optimally anyways due to the shading from the library. It really snowmelt needs sunlight to work properly, and it's not getting it there. So that system's already not working correctly. But also those flat areas along the park and maybe along the other alleyway are not necessary and could be gotten rid of by putting overhangs or other ways of preventing snow accumulation. If we can reduce the size of that snowmelt system, we could essentially phase out a large portion of that boiler system and do a substantial decrease on that as well. And that really fits into this one thing Marty said, is that with retrofits of these buildings, it really is a long-term plan. If we were building a new building, it'd be really easy to come in and just say, let's go all electric. But because we're retrofitting, there's a lot of moving parts that we need to make sure we're taking into account. And then I just want to put it in perspective of the goal that we're taking as well. We're looking at a 30-year goal for 90% reduction. So if we can just start chipping away at this now, in 25 years, I would predict that the technology for electric boilers will have come a long way. Even boilers that were made in the 1990s, as they compare to today's, are completely antiquated, and they've done so much in improving their efficiency and their economics of them as well. That being said, if you wish to electrify, we can do it. It'll be about a year later, and we'll have to figure out all of the costs associated with that, and it will be a substantial increase. That's the end of my presentation. I would like to turn it over to Kathy Chandler real quick and give her an opportunity to speak about the impacts this would have on the library fund.
Let me just see if there's any questions from the board. Do any members of the board have questions for Zach, or can we let Kathy give us some financial data? Francie? Francie, did you have a question? We can't hear you. Steve, did you have a question? We'll let Francie try and figure out her audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I didn't have a question right now. Comments later, though.
Okay. Greg, are you okay? We can let Kathy go on? Okay, and then we'll get Francie back. Kathy, please, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kathy Chandler. I'm the Pitkin County librarian, and I'm sorry, I don't really have any in-depth economic analysis because I don't think that there's any costing out there yet for what the electric boilers would cost. And then from Zach's presentation, I just learned about the need to build a new boiler room and all of the other things that would be necessary in order to realize this electrification of the boilers project. I think I had looked at the information that that we were receiving from Zach and from CORE, and found that one statistic was telling about the cost of reducing the CO2 per ton. If we were to go with just the new gas boilers that had been worked on, was $3 per ton versus the international standard of $50 per ton, and then compared to what the electric boilers would cost, which was $578 per ton, if I'm reading that data correctly. So that, to me, with it being way over 10 times the international standard, it just seems that perhaps it's a noble idea, but its time might not have come yet as far as technology. I would point out that the library, when we did the remodel, our building is 30 years old this fall. And when we did the substantial remodel and expansion of the building back in 2016, that was paid for by donated money to the library, not really taxpayers' funds. And we did a lot of work to try to make the library more energy efficient, with work being done on the chiller system and the HVAC system. We put in a new roof with a lot of additional insulation that brought the R value up to R30, and then used daylighting much better in the building by replacing the skylights with less opaque glass and adding electrified window shades to try to take advantage of daylighting. And then the biggest savings that we realized, I think, besides the insulation, was we retrofitted all of the lighting with LED fixtures and time controls on the lights. So when that was all said and done, we were able to reduce our energy bills by $27,000 a year, in spite of the fact that we had made the building about 25% larger. and we cut our electric use at that time by 251 kilowatt hours, and the gas use was cut by over 18,000 therms. So just pointing out that the library is in favor of trying to be as energy efficient as possible. And I think we went after not just low-hanging fruit, but expensive projects when we did the remodel. And I'm concerned that this is just an idea that's time has not come yet for the library.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Does the board have questions or comments now, or is there any other information, Zach, you would like to present?
I don't have any other information at this time.
Okay, Kelly?
Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate the info. Kathy, I was wondering, could you give us just sort of an overview of like what the library master plan looks like for the next 20 years or so, whatever your horizon is, if we're thinking about some of the challenges that Zach has identified?
Well, I think that there is an opportunity to put money aside to fund this type of project in the future. We have our capital replacement plan does not include this in the project, but I think that there is room in the budget that we could just start, putting money aside and say, well, okay, we're not paying this bigger electric bill right now because we didn't make this change, and then maybe just commit that money to the long-range capital plan so that that money's ready to go when the technology is ready to go. Things that I'm personally trying to work on right now are projects with digitizing some of the local archive information, the local newspapers with the Colorado Historical Newspaper Digitization Project is something that I hope to bring forward in next year's budget proposal. And we're also working with the Aspen Music Festival in School and the Marmot Library Consortium to try to digitize the music festival concerts from 1958 up to the present, just to preserve that local history. So those are relatively big ticket items for us. And then we always are kind of keeping an eye on Snowmass Village to see if there is a way that we could economically have more of a presence in Snowmass Village. Right now, we just take books up on a courier for people to pick up and empty out the book drops up there, but I know that they would love to have some meeting rooms available the way that we do for the public in this building. So those are kind of my wishes, I guess I would say.
Would those digitization projects free up space in the library then?
Nothing substantial. The newspapers are all on microfilm, which is the first step towards switching them over to a digitized record. And then the music festival recordings that we have are all on CDs. So they take up several book stacks, but it's not, probably, it would not free up enough room to put in the new boiler room that we would need, I would think.
Okay, Steve, I know you have questions, but I got Francie back, so let me go to Francie, Steve, and then I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Thank you so much, Kathy and Zach. I never for a moment doubted that you were committed to climate change or to counteracting climate change. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you telling us all that the library has done, Kathy. I guess the most glaring thing, other than electrification, would be the sidewalk thing, as you mentioned, Zach, the melting of the sidewalks. And, like that front area that goes out to the courtyard there, is there some reason why that couldn't just be shoveled instead of building some overhang? Or, can we just shovel? That would be one suggestion. And so, I'm disappointed in the numbers and surprised at the size of the electric boilers, because it was my understanding that tankless electric boilers were small. So But I trust your research, and that's what you're there for. So I really appreciate you taking the time to respond to my objection of last week. And so thank you.
Thanks, Francie. Okay, Steve?
So I'm disappointed too. It doesn't surprise me. When Snowmass Village was looking at, they have 3 boilers that run the snowmelt road system for different zones there. And it uses an incredible amount of natural gas to do that. And at one point I proposed to them that they build a ground heat assisted system under Fanny Hill to cool Fanny Hill down in the winter so the snow would last longer. And they would take the heat and use it to supplement or to do the entire snowmelt system. And that's probably about the order of magnitude of a ground heat assisted system you would need is a fairly large area, or being able to drill down and use heated water from deep, like geothermal water from deep underground is the kind of thing we would have to do to be able to, to do the snowmelt system without any supplemental fossil fuel input. So in the meantime, to me, it seems pretty clear that the most efficient thing we can do right now is to put in the most efficient natural gas boilers that we can. Snowmass Village did that for Snowmelt Road, and they probably cut their energy consumption by a third or some fairly large number like that. In the meantime, I think whatever we could do to minimize the amount of snowmelt through, I think this would require further study to figure out each of the zones. Is there a way that we can cut down the amount of snowmelt effectively, just to reduce the amount of natural gas we have to burn for that? And take, if there are some simple steps we can take on some of those areas, let's go ahead and study those to try to reduce the natural gas consumption. Also, within 25 years, we might be able to purchase renewable natural gas, biogas. Might be a viable option for us to buy biogas to use in our boilers, in which case then the carbon footprint would be virtually eliminated. And so that's another possible thing happening technologically. So that would be my vote for now, is to go ahead and do the boilers. We get the reduction in CO2 equivalent emissions, and but not as much as we would hope, but we do get some reduction in the CO2, so I think let's go for that.
Great, thanks you. I think Mike has some information. I don't know if you can we get him from there? Do we need to move him over? About the snowmelt?
Oh, you got a camera here.
Yeah, the microphone's right here.
I think this mic is on, all right? Yeah. All right, well, thank you. I'm Mike Flegel with
We hear him?
Facilities Operations. Thanks for allowing me to interject here on the question about snowmelt systems. Steve, that was a great question and great discussion. From a facilities operations and maintenance standpoint, we like snowmelt. It vastly reduces the risk of possible injury to the public, to our building occupants, our visitors, everything, and it just reduces the workload on my staff. We're the ones who do the snow removal on Main Street and on the sidewalks that aren't melted. And wherever possible, facilities has historically been trying to go to snow melt. So with where the discussion is going, I'm not saying that it's a bad discussion, but it would be a 90 to 100 degree turn from our current trajectory in trying to make more snow melted areas. But given the discussion with natural gas consumption, energy consumption, CO2 reduction, I could foresee a future where we are reducing snow melt systems and going back to mechanical means of snow removal, snow and ice removal, and that doesn't have to always fall back on the current existing staff. We could always do this through contracting. There's plenty of snow removal contractors in the valley that'll come out and shovel snow, blow snow, haul snow, distribute sand, salt, whatever we need. So I just like to point out that, you know, yeah, we do have an awful lot of snow melt around the library. Is it all necessary now? That's a future discussion we could certainly be part of. There is ways to turn them off. I'm not sure that we could zone off, you know, Mill Street from the rest. I'd have to look at the schematics on that, but it's probably possible through some changes in piping and pumps and whatnot. But I'm pretty certain that if that's the direction that the council or the county commissioners would like to see us go to, that was certainly something we could look into as an option. And then we would just go back to a mechanical means of snow removal or coverings or whatever might help. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And I think part of that discussion, I think it's a discussion I'm kind of feeling that the Board of Commissioners would like to have, see what we can do to tone down the snow melt. But the other thing with mechanical and hiring somebody to come, then we have to look at the trucks coming up and down, the equipment they're using, the stuff we're putting on, the sand, the salt, and what, you know, it's a whole environmental impact. We talked about that when we talked about snow melt in residential, you know, properties. So, but I think that's a discussion I'm seeing the board might want to look at, you know, not between now and putting in the gas spoilers, but I'm also seeing a lean towards just moving ahead with the gas spoilers. But Greg, you were the one that really brought up the electrification, you know, of the library, so I'm sure you have some comments, because we have a few more minutes here.
Great, thanks, Patty. I appreciate it. I appreciate what everyone has said. Clearly, this is the rub right here. This is the big ticket, difficult rub that we have to face if we're going to take climate change and carbon emissions seriously. We're going to run into this with virtually every retrofit I can imagine in any public building or any home, or, you know, really this is going to be the hard stuff. Clearly, it's very expensive. It's too expensive. I think the snow melt system is worth looking at because, as Mike points out, yeah, it was a convenient way to eliminate sand and dust from sand and mechanical removal and all that. But is really now we're looking at a different cost. We're looking at different economics. And so I think we do need to examine the snow melt. So we talked about that. I think that's great. The big thing that popped out in Zach's discussion for me was that it sounds as if Aspen's net zero energy program, which has a great ring to it, and it's great PR, but does it actually discourage retrofitting buildings? You know, if the cost of the charge is so high for electricity that it actually discourages retrofits, is that a counterproductive thing? And I think we need to look at that because it sounded as if the charge for electrical power through the Aspen grid was it 5 times Holy Cross or 4 times? And I'm not sure I understand it correctly, so I don't want to go any farther than that, but it certainly is worth examining. Are we actually discouraging electrification through these policies? I know Mona Newton had a lot of interest in this, and she can't be here right now. I think she's going to join us in a little bit for the next conversation to talk about. And she was just saying, God, please investigate the heat pumps, see what can be done. I really appreciate Kathy's. I remember you telling us about all the work that was done to retrofit the library a few years ago, and it really seems to have made a difference, and that was great. So we're going in the right direction. This just seems to be a roadblock that we can't really go around. So it's probably time to put the boilers in, as much as I hate conceding that. Maybe we can figure out how to make it up some other way. So thanks for that for now. But I think this is a great introduction to a bigger discussion, and I'm hoping Zach will take the bait on that, and we can dive into it more.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Kelly?
What about me?
Oh, sorry.
I think Francie was before me.
All right.
Just for the record, it was I who objected to the boilers, and then I asked Greg his opinion after I talked about electrification, just clearing that up. Remember that, Greg? And,
regrettably, yes, I did speak up. I could have just kept my mouth shut.
But I did want to say that and this is to Mike as much as anybody, that I would be much happier paying some 16-year-old kid to shovel the walkways than pay the gas company to do it. So just that comment.
Okay, Kelly?
If I could,
Yeah, I always have
Wait,
to
wait,
be glass, so
wait,
I
wait.
never get to jump at these
oh,
things
Wait.
first.
I
anyway.
wanted to jump in on Francie there, but go ahead.
Well, you know, maybe we need to make a formal request to ask them to waive that surcharge in the event of this type of project. You know, I don't want to, they do need to put sort of at, like, the question is a public policy question that I think needs to be debated, because we are going to be looking to our community to make these retrofits, you know, in their own buildings, and so I continue to really struggle with this. And, you know, I know we probably don't have fully the time to vet it, but I also have the question of, like, okay, so how do we mitigate this then? You know, I'd like to hear more about what the other opportunities are at other buildings and those timelines. You know, do we need to bump timelines up? Do we need to actively mitigate in between those timelines as well? Because, you know, that's a lot. I mean, the difference between 607 and 2,200 something tons of carbon is a lot. You know, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to just ignore that on my time here. You know, I want to take full responsibility for my decisions and, like, see their life cycle through. If I have to say, okay, I've chosen to mitigate, you know, to create these emissions on behalf of the community, I equally want to choose to account for them and mitigate them. So I think that's an important part of the discussion that has to come back. And, you know, I would be happy for us as a board to sort of formally make a request of the city, of the utility. I'm not sure if their governance structures are one and the same or different, to say, you know, here's an opportunity to maybe partner on this or pilot on this. That would help everyone.
Okay. And Francie, I'll call on you just a second, guys, because, you know, we're running over on time, which is not a surprise for us. But Kelly, in light of what you just said, and Steve and Greg and Francie, there was a letter, I think, to the editor today or yesterday from Skippy about the same issue, about how we're all in this together, we all need to be partners. So I think the time is right to open the discussion. Kelly, add it to your list of future agenda items. I think we need to bring that forward with a joint meeting to see what we can do. And Zach's over here shaking his head at, yes, we need to have a further discussion at the BOCC level with the county as to what we can do. If we're doing something here, what can we do over here to help mitigate those cause and effects? So Zach is saying, yes, we will have that discussion. So I'm not sure who's next in line here. Greg and Steve, you can fight it out. Oh, you're going.
Can I go? I was just going to say, if you look at old pictures of Aspen in the day, and you talk to the old timers, they talk about the days when the streets weren't plowed and the sidewalks weren't groomed for every drop of snow, and they look at it nostalgically, and I'm one of them. I certainly love to see more snow on the streets of town. So I think what we have done is we've become accustomed, and the public demands for everything to be just completely devoid of snow and ice are, you know, it's a change we've all made and at great cost, and the cost is to the climate. So I'm just wondering if we might also change our expectations slightly and see if there's a way we can do that and still remain safe. Maybe guardrails on those steep sidewalks. Okay.
Wait, Steve, before you go, John Peacock, did you want to comment on what Greg just said?
Yeah, I think before we make too many decisions on snow and ice removal, Greg, I think you're starting to hit the nail on the head there with guardrails or such, that there is a liability component to this that we need to recognize. We have actually experienced that related to snow removal in the past, and I just think it begs for just a little bit more conversation and information before you make a policy decision around snow and ice removal. And that is some of what's pushed us into this unfortunate position, I think, in cases particularly around busy public facilities of implementing snow melt. So just want to throw that cautionary tale out because I'm definitely hearing some momentum building.
Okay, Steve, and then I'm gonna wrap this up, guys, so we can move on, but Steve, go ahead.
So, I remember a story of a gentleman slipping on ice at the Black Saddle where the Snowmass Cross Country Center was. Just a little piece of ice that hadn't melted and hadn't been chipped off. And he was seriously injured. The precautionary tale of, protecting members of the public and public places is important. I'm gonna put on my thinking outside the box hat and just suggest some things that we might want to consider. One would be working with the city, do a joint project for producing a lot of heat from whatever source. It could be a cogeneration thing, collecting heat from HVAC systems that's being blown out of buildings in the sort of that campus area. Collect that heat from the city hall, the county buildings, some of the businesses in the vicinity, and using that heat for preheating the water for the snowmelt system. That would be one possibility, cogeneration. Second would be the only big flat piece of ground anywhere near there is Rio Grande Park, where we could do a ground heat assisted system that would be jointly owned by the city and the county. They could bury pipes under the whole of Rio Grande Park and take the heat from that to help heat City Hall and the library and the snowmelt systems in that whole general vicinity. So I think that would be worth, discussing that with the city and maybe having CORE or somebody do a little preliminary look at it and see if that would be feasible. Third thought would be along the line of Greg's thinking, would be way cheaper to give everybody stabilizers to put on their shoes and let some snow and ice accumulate on places in the city, and then people would have to get used to taking them off before they walk into the library or into county buildings. But that probably would be a way less expensive solution to having people be able to walk safely around town. So some different thoughts, ways we could deal with this in different ways.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Steve. So John, and then I'm wrapping this because we're over.
I just wanted to note that is part of the project that we're doing with Holy Cross and RAFTA Public Works and the airport is not only a microgrid, but an ectogrid, which allows us to move heat and cooling resources between buildings. So I think we do have a project going that could serve as a, I don't know whether you call it a beta for that or to develop other partnerships on. And so we are thinking along those lines. As we're finding, there's a lot of infrastructure challenges as well as governance challenges to overcome. And that's what we're learning in this process that hopefully will be successful and we can carry forward as you're suggesting. So we do have some of those leading experiments going on right now in our community.
Okay, so in wrapping this, I think the board has given direction to proceed with the natural gas boilers, looking at efficiencies, et cetera, cost and design, and moving forward and getting it done before the winter season, if possible. And I think the other issue is to bring back a further discussion, possibly with the city, on their tiered utility charges. What do they call it?
It's a demand charge.
Demand charge. And also looking at snowmelt and opportunities we might have at the library. So are we clear there? Okay, great. So thank you. Thanks, Mike and Zach and Kathy. And Connie, thank you so much for participating in today's meeting with us. All right, so we're gonna move to the next item on our agenda.
I just asked Zach to send that presentation to Charlotte to distribute to the board, please.
Oh, okay,
Absolutely.
great. Thanks, Kelly. And so next, we're gonna move on to, review of future agendas. Mr. Peacock.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. Only thing I have right now is a question. Jim Vishansi has reapplied to be on the P&Z. The board had already done an interview. We had a question whether you'd like to re-interview as part of that process or rely on his previous interview.
So it's up to the board. So we have one other applicant, I think we're interviewing, we have two others and James. So
And
does,
the deadline is June 11th.
so does the board want to re-interview Jim, or are we good with his previous interview? We good? Kelly's good? We're good. So we do not need to re-interview.
I think I'm good without
Okay.
re-interviewing.
We can always
And
rewatch it.
Yeah, we should all watch it
Yeah,
again.
so maybe if Charlotte can send us that link too, that would be great.
That's all I have.
Okay,
for
does
future
any other
agendas.
members of the board have future agenda items? Kelly?
Yeah, just quickly, Patty's gonna run next Tuesday's meeting. I will join for 1:30. For the two items, 1:30 and 2:15, and then I'll probably have to drop off because I'll be traveling back to town. So I just wanted the board to know that I won't be there for the full meeting. And then looking at the noticing for, the 22nd, I think we should list the River District as like a staff community presentation, because right now it reads as if we're like jointly, both boards are meeting. So I don't want people to have the impression that like the entire River District directors are coming when it's staff.
Okay, we'll clarify that. Okay, anything else, Kelly?
Don't think so.
We have some changes to tomorrow's agenda, which we'll make at the beginning of the meeting tomorrow, correct, John? Shifting those items so they correspond better. Staff knows about that. Most of it's with the Lazy Glen, so that they're back to back rather than spread out. So we'll change that tomorrow at the beginning of our meeting. So any other
I
future,
did try a heads up.
yeah, any other future agenda items from the board? Okay. So we are catching up on time, Kelly. So we are now gonna move to board open discussion, and I know we have some items here. John, did you have?
I was going to cover a couple of things. We do have Greg's methane solution solutions letter of support for CORE that is due today. So before we lost anyone, I wanted to make sure that the board had an opportunity to talk about that letter. It was distributed, I believe, electronically to all board members. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. We're on a really short timeline, I think, for this one, if I recall, Greg. So I wanted to bring that up first and get any direction around that.
Well, so I'm just gonna, because I just read it quite thoroughly, so we're gonna put it on the proper letterhead. We're gonna address it to the senators with their address. We're gonna do the regular format. And then I'll let the board have, if the board has comments, I have some comments, but I'll turn it to the board to see. Greg, did you have something you wanted to say, or?
Yeah, I would just say, I think Mona Newton may be trying to get in, participate in this, just because she was told about this application just last week from Senator Bennett's office. She turned it around and just really got it done and actually put the proposal in. What this is a support letter that should be very helpful. Here's Mona. She's with us. So I'll hand it over to Mona. I think this could be, it's a preliminary application, so we don't have a lot of detail, but we want to do is get our names in the hopper and let them know we're serious. And with that, I'll hand it to Mona just for a second.
Okay.
It's okay.
Great, because I think the letter is pretty self-explanatory for the basics. So Mona, if you want to give us just a quick overview, I'll turn it back to the board.
Yes, we're interested in requesting, this is congressional directed spending request, and the staff have requested ideas, suggestions for potential infrastructure funding that would come about.
And this is a methane solutions project that Greg mentioned, and it is pretty well outlined in your letter, so I don't want to take a lot of time, but I think it's an interesting opportunity. I was listening to your meeting, the discussion that you just had about the boilers and carbon emissions, and this project, it's a long shot, in all honesty. We're in the investigation stages of gathering data, literally gathering readings of methane emissions from coal basin mines that were abandoned in Pitkin County. And they're quite large, and the state did an analysis in 2016. It was actually a great report, the Colorado Energy Office, and they looked at various mines where methane emissions were leaking. This was some legislation that I believe Gail Schwartz helped get passed back in 2016, because methane is quite a potent greenhouse gas. And so this is a project that we started that was investigated a while back. We're reinvestigating it with monitoring data, and we need resources in order to continue the data gathering and then develop the project. And so I've gone ahead. We have a small stakeholder group that Greg is part of, and I'm part of, and CECO, and a couple of guys that have degrees in physics and science, and also Alex DeGolia and RAPTA, and they're looking at how we can potentially capture and destroy this methane. It would probably be a different project than you've heard about at Somerset, but nevertheless, it would be a very worthwhile effort. We have a wild basis of a budget request of about $2 million. That's based on some budget numbers that Chris Kasky has put together, and again, he's one of the physicists that went to Colorado School of Mines. He's a scientist, and so we're looking at this project, and I would appreciate your support for this. We have spoken with John Whitney, who is the Western Slope Regional Rep for Bennett, and he's supportive of this project because you probably know that methane is part of the CORE Act, and Pitkin County's been pretty active in supporting the CORE Act, not the community office, the other CORE Act, so, and the national federal legislation. And he is pretty excited about the project. And I think we've actually gotten some interest from Deb Haaland's office, Secretary of State, Secretary of Interior, excuse me. And so anyway, I would appreciate that letter of support. So thank you.
Okay, Kelly?
Yeah, I support it. And this funding was a topic of breakfast conversation with Sarah in Senator Hickenlooper's Grand Junction office. And she had sort of said today is the last day to get it in. So,
Perfect.
yeah, you got my support, send it in at, 1:30. Like, yeah, I'll let her know it's on its way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I just am going to jump in here. I have some, Steve, did you have something you wanted to say quickly? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was wondering what changes that Greg suggested to the letter, because I didn't see the original letter.
I can very quickly. I just added some at the end. First of all, it'd be we rather than I, because first I started it as an I. We switched to we, but I also, at John Whitney's suggestion, I invited the senators to come and visit the project, just as I had invited Secretary Haaland to come and actually see the project and explore once things get up and rolling. And then also mentioned our advocacy for the CORE Act, which those two have, really advocated for. So I did add a paragraph. I sent it to Charlotte. She could send that around pretty quickly, I think, or I could. But no huge changes. But that's really what I add is invitations to come and see it and to let them know that, this is really one of our, CORE Act has been pretty front and center for us as well. Thanks.
Okay, I'm fine with that, but at the first sentence should be, we are writing to express our support, not my support. So those little cleanups, I think. And Mona, I have a question. Is this letter going to be attached to the application? Because if not, we should attach it to this letter, so, because we reference that in here, the project submitted. So I think we should make sure that it's attached to the project submitted.
Well, I've actually already submitted the application. I've been working with John on it last week, their website was down. I spent all Friday afternoon working on 2 different applications, and so I submitted it to John Whitney and to Senator Hickenlooper as well. So they've both been submitted.
Okay, so you don't think we need to, because we refer to it in the letter, I just want to make sure it gets to the application itself. So however you think we
Yep.
need. Okay, well, okay, then we're
Yep.
good. And then I do have a concern about our constituents and our elected officials in Pickens County have committed to. Are we, in this letter, speaking for the city of Aspen, Basalt, Snowmass Village? I'm not quite sure how we should say that.
Well, they have actually committed to pretty aggressive climate action goals, so you're not incorrect in stating that. I mean, we can, Basalt, Town of Snowmass Village, and City of Aspen
Okay.
all have pretty aggressive climate action.
All right, I just want to make sure the board's comfortable with speaking for our elected officials. Is everybody comfortable with that? Steve, you are? Greg is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, just a comment, I remember when Auden Schindler had spoken after they did the methane capture project in Somerset, and he thought the next best coal mine to do that in, or abandoned coal mine, was somewhere in Illinois. And I think it would be terrific if we could do something in Coal Basin, really close to Somerset, in our own territory, to show the rest of the country, another way that this can be done.
Yeah, and Auden's been part of this project, the conversations that we're having now.
Yeah, and I was part of the Somerset project when I was chairman of CORE. So it goes way back.
Right.
So,
Right.
okay,
Which
so
only took 10 years to get going.
I know, and then we got the ski company involved, and who knows what's happening there now in Somerset. But is the board comfortable then moving this forward with just some minor changes in proper formatting? Great, great, so we have direction. John, are you sending that off to Charlotte then?
We're editing it right now.
You are the best. Okay, any other open discussion
Thank you all.
from the board?
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Patty?
Yes, Greg, please.
Just very briefly, as people may have noticed or heard, the construction work is beginning now out at the solar farm. We see activity out there. A little bit of dust has been raised, but this morning I noticed that they actually had a water truck, looked like a water truck out there tamping down dust. I know some public comment has already come in about that, but I think that, I don't think dust is going to be a big problem. It sounds like they're already on it, but they're beginning, and that's it's good to see that they've finally begun work on that project.
Well, keep an eye on it for us, Greg, okay? Any other open discussion from the board?
Thank you.
I am Kelly, and then John, you have another?
After Kelly.
I was just saying bye to Mona.
Oh, bye, Mona. John? Thanks,
Yeah.
Mona.
Just for the board and the public, we are seeing a lot of smoke blow up into the valley, particularly the Crystal River Valley. That is actually coming from the fires in Arizona right now, and we're expecting to see some record heat down there later this week. So we'll probably continue to see some of that smoke working its way into the valley. That said, our energy release component measurements are starting to shift with the dry weather. It is looking like at elevations below 7,500 feet, they're starting to reach concerning levels. We typically run a couple weeks behind that if there are not significant rainstorms or moisture. And so I think just for the board and the public, I think we can expect to start to see some of the fire restrictions and such working their way up the valley here over the next couple weeks. We still have the authorization in place for the sheriff to put those into place as those ERC measurements, that the energy release component measurements, meet the threshold to indicate fire danger. We do need to re-up that in July, so we have that on our radar screen to bring that back to the board. But just for the board and for the public, the smoke is from the fires in Arizona. And I think we can expect to start to see fire restrictions over the next couple weeks.
And I thought Cindy had mentioned there was a fire maybe around the rifle area, DeBeck? Yeah, so we
Yeah.
might have some local smaller ones, but I know we have significant fires in Arizona.
Yeah, I talked to Valerie before coming in.
Okay,
and
so that was the-
yeah.
Okay. And Kelly, just let me tag onto this and then I'll get to you real quick. And John, I did speak with Fire Marshal Scott, and Scott, our buddy Scott, and he said that their concern over the meeting we were supposed to have today was more about a broader discussion about some significant wildfire mitigation projects we can be working with U.S. Forest Service with. And so he's going to be kind of, circling back to us on that. So,
Okay.
So I just wanted to let you know. Kelly?
Thanks, Patty. I want to tag on to that because I'd really like to hear from our fire chiefs. I'm disappointed that didn't work out for today, and want to figure out how we should be, putting time on future agendas for that conversation. Because I'm just concerned that they're going to get busier and busier, and that the opportunity to, understand the local landscape for, what John raised with the moisture indicators, et cetera. The time really is now to get that information out. And also, I think just educate our population of folks who are new to our community as to what to expect with, the fire season here at hand. So, yeah. We will continue, Patty and John and staff, to figure out when we're going to slate that, hopefully soon.
Yeah, and I agree. And also, I'd like to maybe have an even broader discussion on whether or not we need somebody appointed or hired to do wildfire management for the county, especially in the next few years with the drought factors and the fact we have a lot of vegetation right now. Kelly?
Yeah, thanks. I was talking with our fellow commissioner in Uray because Kevin Warner had brought to my attention, I think it's called the Western Regional Fire Council, which has some staff, and I understand from Uray that he said that surrounding jurisdictions pass through kind of federal Title III funds to that organization to staff it up and organize the projects, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to share that information. I don't know if he said that Uray didn't get Title III funding, but they made their own contributions. And so I don't know how that works for us, or if that's a model we might want to investigate a little further.
Yeah, and I think Scott Thompson, the fire chief, was talking to me about that just briefly as to how they actually do this management in Summit County, which saved the Buffalo Spring or Buffalo something River fire last year that avoided that whole subdivision because there had been extensive U.S. Forest Service mitigation. It's when you could see the line was literally drawn for the fire where it was mitigated. So I think that's an important concept. I know Greg's been talking about that for a while as to we need to do something significant as far as mitigating for wildfires. So I think that's a discussion. Kelly, you're right. We should have it much sooner than later. Any other open discussion from the board? I did speak with John Whitney. Oh, Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. Just based on, what Greg had raised with an invitation for our delegation, I think we should maybe think as a board about if we want to try and plan, a day to invite them to come up and see multiple projects. I've been speaking with staff here about the airport and, how we'd love for them to come up this summer and do a tour of the airport, et cetera. So maybe we want to combine kind of our requests, and staff has indicated that they're starting to plan August recess. So I think in the next week we should maybe do a formal request to their offices with, the items that we want to prioritize for a visit from them, so that maybe they can do it in one stop, multiple things, cover multiple things.
Good idea. Okay. And so I did speak with John Whitney about the ski area fee retention bill. And I'm still working on the letter because it was actually dropped yesterday, and they had a hearing already scheduled at the House level. I'm not sure which committee it was going to first. So he said we had a little more time to get the letter on to him, and I talked to him about redrafting it and sending it just from Pitkin County. He thought that would be great. We also did briefly talk about the airport and about some visits here and just bringing Senator Bennett's office into the loop, and that Sarah, isn't it Sarah from Grand Junction, Greg, right? That is already keyed in. We've already been in contact with her, so I think that they know what's moving forward on our side, and I'm sure they would enjoy coming up here. And Kelly, you're right. When we get them here, let's take them on a tour. I think that's a great idea. So we'll work on that, okay, Mr. Peacock? Got it. He's got it. All right. Any other open discussion? You guys having a good time over there?
You know, everything, I could do this conference like from the pool, the hotel pool, because everything is like on Zoom. Anyway, I haven't. I've been sitting in the room the whole time. And it's really nice to see colleagues, and they have some great kind of productive conversations on topics here. For me, it's really weird to be in person around all these people, but
yeah,
it's been productive.
Great.
I think it's kind of weird to have a whole room full of people and then have a presenter on Zoom. Really?
We're all sitting here and you're not in the room.
So it's really amazing being there and in person and visiting with people. I always have a visit with Scott McGinnis when I get a chance, because we met when he was our congressman years and years ago.
He's still a
but he gave me a little report on the COVID in Mesa County right now. He said their hospitals are full in Mesa County right now because of this, I think because of the variant they have there. So that's just a word of caution for us on the COVID virus.
Well, John Peacock's going to add to that.
Yeah, yesterday at our check-in, I think we had a report that their ICU beds were around 90%, so that's very full. That Mesa County is in our RETAC region, so that is going to be impacting those measures. I will say, for the first time though, Pitkin County is very much on the other end of that scale, that we hit our first 7-day mark of no cases for 7 days, which is really good. But Mesa County's numbers are still high, and they are seeing what's now called the Delta variant, that was previously called the Indian variant. They're switching to a Greek alphabet, I think, to name the variants. And so they are seeing those. We are seeing some in coming up through Garfield County. So we are keeping a close eye on that because they are experiencing high levels of transmission and hospitalizations. My understanding is that Mesa County's vaccination rate is still around in the 40s %, and so our vaccination rate is higher. Our understanding from the most recent studies is the vaccines, while not as effective against like the Delta variant, are still highly effective in the I think 80+% range.
Well, and I saw in the Denver news that, Colorado as a whole has good numbers, but the mountain communities have the better numbers as far as vaccination rates. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important and they cited it because we have so many visitors coming and going from our communities, that's a benefit to our recovery as we move forward. So that's amazing. No cases. That's makes you not a sigh of relief yet, but yeah, just we're on the right track as far as right now. Greg?
Just wanted to say I just saw a news thing pop up about a Cottonwood Pass fire. 35 minutes ago, there's a fire on Cottonwood Pass, apparently. So it's not all Arizona. So it's here. The fires are here, and I guess we can be reminded COVID is here as well, having just received that. So
did they say which
just be cautious, remain cautious.
It's Eagle County.
Oh, it's Eagle County.
They're sending cruise over there, is what I'm told.
Yeah, we got notice that Cottonwood Pass was closing, but we didn't get notice why, so thanks, Greg.
I just wanted to clarify, it's not the other Cottonwood Pass, because there's the other Cottonwood Pass
No, it's
over.
the Cottonwood Pass in Eagle County.
Okay, that's too close.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Who's gonna be here tomorrow? Are we all here tomorrow? Kelly, you be in the in-house tomorrow? Okay. All right.
I'll be
Then-
long distance. I'll be here, but on Zoom.
Okay.
On Zoom also.
Okay, Greg, we gonna see you with your Florida tan in the room tomorrow?
Wow, I could possibly come in tomorrow. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. in
That would be
person,
nice
if
to
it's not
see
too
you.
crowded over there.
No, we'll make sure we clear the room for you. All right, guys, thank you very much. We are closing this work session. Thank you. Thanks for all your help in guiding me through this experience. So I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks. Thank you, Grassroots, and thank you, Michaela.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well done.